There are moments in life when aging is misunderstood as slowing down, when in truth, it is often the beginning of deepening. Ancient wisdom does not see aging as decline, it sees it as refinement. So today, let's walk through 7 life lessons from ancient wisdom to navigate aging with unshakable mental strength. In a reflective, storytelling way, like sitting under a quiet sky, talking about life, truth, and what really sustains us when everything else starts changing. 1. You are not the body, you are the observer of the body. There is an ancient truth that becomes more real as we age. You are not the body, you are the one who observes the body. In youth, we strongly identify with strength, appearance, and energy. But as years pass, the body begins to change. Pain appears, speed reduces, memory fluctuates, and suddenly a question arises: who am I now? In a quiet village lived an 83-year-old man named Karim. Every evening he would sit outside his small home watching children play. One day a boy asked him, "Uncle, don't you feel sad seeing your body so weak?" Karim smiled gently and replied, "My body is weak, yes, but I am not my body. I am the one who knows it is weak." That simple statement carries deep ancient wisdom from the Upanishads. Awareness is separate from the physical form. The body is like a vehicle, it changes, ages, and eventually stops. But the driver remains the observer. Many elderly people suffer not from aging itself, but from identity confusion. When they say I am useless or I am broken, they attach their identity to the body. But when they shift to my body is experiencing change, but I am still here, suffering reduces. A retired teacher once shared that she overcame depression not through medication alone, but through daily reflection. I am not my pain, I am the witness of my pain. This shift creates mental strength that cannot be shaken by age. The body may slow down, but awareness does not age. It simply observes quietly and steadily, like the sky watching clouds pass. True wisdom begins when we stop saying, "I am old," and start realizing, "I am aware of aging." That difference changes everything. 2. Letting go is not loss, it is liberation. Aging often brings a series of goodbyes. We say goodbye to people, roles, energy, and sometimes even dreams we once held tightly. Ancient wisdom teaches that letting go is not destruction, but transformation. There was a woman named Mira in Mumbai who lost her husband after 45 years of marriage. For months, she lived in silence. Every morning, she would place 2 cups of tea on the table out of habit. Her daughter thought she was stuck in sorrow. One morning, her granddaughter asked, "Nanny, why do you still keep 2 cups?" Mira gently replied, "One is for memory and one is for acceptance." That simple answer reflects deep inner wisdom. Memory keeps love alive, but acceptance keeps life moving. The Bhagavad Gita reminds us that everything in this world is temporary. What comes will also go. The more tightly we hold on, the more pain we feel when life naturally changes its form. Letting go does not mean forgetting. It means releasing resistance. Many elderly people suffer not because of loss itself, but because they continue fighting reality in their minds. A retired army officer once said, "The hardest battle I fought was not in war, but in accepting retirement." When he finally accepted his new phase of life, he began volunteering at a local school. He discovered peace not in what he lost, but in what he allowed to begin. Letting go is like opening your hand. When it is closed tightly, it holds nothing new. When it opens, it becomes capable of receiving again. In aging, liberation begins when we stop asking, "Why did I lose this?" and start asking, "What now wants to enter my life?" That shift brings peace that no external change can disturb. 3. Your mind is either your greatest friend or your worst enemy. The greatest battlefield in aging is not the body, but the mind. Ancient wisdom repeatedly reminds us that the mind can either become a friend or an enemy depending on how we relate to it. There was a monk who once said, "I have lived 2 lives in one lifetime." When asked how, he explained, "In the first life, I believed every thought I had. In the second, I learned to watch my thoughts without obeying them." As people grow older, the mind often becomes louder. It whispers thoughts like, "I am useless now, my life has no value, or nobody needs me anymore." If we believe every thought, suffering increases. A 75-year-old retired teacher once shared her transformation. After losing her job identity, she fell into deep sadness. Then she began a simple practice each morning. She would sit quietly and say, This is a thought, not a truth. Slowly, her relationship with her mind changed. Thoughts still came, but they no longer controlled her emotions. Ancient wisdom from yoga philosophy explains that the mind is like a tool. A tool is useful when used correctly, but harmful when it controls the user. In aging, mental strength is not about stopping negative thoughts. It is about creating distance from them. When we stop identifying with every passing thought, we regain stability. One man described it beautifully. My mind is like a noisy neighbor, but I have stopped inviting him inside my house. This realization brings freedom. The mind may continue its stories, but we no longer live inside every story it creates. That is where true inner strength begins, especially in later years of life. 4. Purpose evolves, it does not retire. One of the greatest misconceptions about aging is that purpose ends with retirement. Ancient wisdom clearly teaches that purpose does not disappear, it simply changes form. There was a retired railway clerk named Mr. Sharma in Delhi. After retirement, he felt empty. He would often say, "My life has stopped because my work has stopped." For months, he spent his days in silence, feeling invisible. Then one day, he started teaching slum children near his home. It began with just 2 children, then 5, and slowly more joined. When asked why he started this at his age, he smiled and said, "Earlier I worked for salary. Now I work for meaning." That shift changed everything for him. Ancient wisdom does not define purpose by occupation, it defines purpose by contribution. Wherever your presence brings light, reduces suffering, or supports growth, that is purpose. Many elderly people suffer because they believe their usefulness is over. But wisdom says usefulness never ends, it only changes direction. A grandmother who once felt ignored by her family began cooking simple meals for homeless people in her neighborhood. She said, "I may not run a house anymore, but I can still feed hearts." Purpose in later life is often simpler but deeper. It is no longer about achievement, but about service, presence, and compassion. When we stop asking, "What am I now?" and start asking, "How can I still serve?" life regains meaning. Aging becomes painful only when purpose is tied to identity. When purpose is tied to humanity, it continues until the last breath. Purpose does not retire. It evolves quietly, waiting for us to notice it again in new forms of life. 5. The present moment is the only place where life exists. One of the deepest teachings of ancient wisdom is that life exists only in the present moment. Yet, as people age, the mind often travels more into the past and future, creating emotional suffering. There was a yogi who compared life to sitting beside a flowing river. He said, "If you keep looking at where the river came from, you live in the past. If you keep worrying about where it will go, you live in the future. But if you sit beside it, you experience it." A 70-year-old man named Raghav once visited a counselor. He said, "I am constantly disturbed by my past mistakes." The counselor asked him, "Are you making those mistakes right now?" Raghav paused and said, "No." The counselor replied, "Then why are you living there?" That question changed his awareness. Aging often brings memory heavy living. People replay regrets, lost opportunities, and painful decisions. But ancient wisdom says memory is a tool, not a place to live. Similarly, fear of the future creates anxiety. Thoughts like "what will happen to me?" or "who will take care of me?" pull the mind away from the only real moment that exists now. A simple practice shared by sages is awareness of breath. When attention returns to breathing, the mind returns to the present. One elderly woman described it beautifully. "When I focus on my breath, I feel like I have returned home." Mental strength in aging is not about controlling time, but about returning repeatedly to now. Because life is never in yesterday or tomorrow. It is always unfolding in this single present moment. When the mind rests here, peace naturally arises without effort. 6. Compassion keeps the mind young even when the body ages. Ancient wisdom teaches that compassion is one of the strongest forces that preserves inner vitality. While the body may age, the heart remains young through acts of care and connection. In Japan, there lived an 80-year-old man who fed stray cats every morning. Even when his knees hurt, he continued walking slowly with food packets in his hands. When asked why he still did it, he replied, "Because something inside me feels alive when I care." This reflects a universal truth. Caring for others keeps the mind emotionally active and meaningful. Aging often brings isolation. Friends pass away, children become busy, and social circles shrink. In this silence, loneliness can grow. But compassion becomes an antidote. A retired woman once shared how her life changed after she started helping at a small community kitchen. She said, I thought I had nothing left to give, but I discovered I still have kindness. Ancient wisdom emphasizes that love does not depend on physical strength. Even small gestures, listening, smiling, encouraging, create deep emotional nourishment. Science today confirms what sages always knew. Compassion reduces stress and increases emotional resilience. The mind becomes rigid when it turns inward only, but when it turns outward in care, it expands again. Many elderly individuals find renewed joy not in receiving care but in giving it. This shift from who will care for me to whom can I care for transforms emotional health. Compassion is not an action alone, it is a state of being where the heart remains open despite aging. When compassion flows, the mind does not feel old, it feels connected. And connection is what keeps life meaningful at every stage. 7. Peace is not found in control but in acceptance. One of the final lessons of ancient wisdom is perhaps the most powerful. Peace is not achieved by controlling life, but by accepting it as it is. There is an old story of a king who wanted to eliminate suffering from his kingdom. He gathered wise ministers and asked them for solutions. After years of effort, they returned with a single answer. Suffering ends when acceptance begins. Confused, the king visited a farmer whose land had been destroyed by floods. Instead of anger, the farmer said calmly, I will plant again when the water recedes. The king asked, Why are you not angry? The farmer replied, If I fight the river, I lose peace. If I accept its nature, I keep my mind. Aging brings many uncontrollable changes, health declines, roles shift, people leave, and independence reduces. Resistance to these changes creates suffering. A retired man once said, My biggest struggle was not aging, but refusing to accept it. When he finally accepted his new reality, he found peace in simple routines, conversations, and silence. Ancient wisdom teaches that life is constantly moving. Nothing remains the same. Acceptance does not mean giving up, it means aligning with reality instead of fighting it. When the mind stops saying this should not be happening, it becomes calm. Peace is not a destination reached after solving every problem. It is a state that appears when the mind stops resisting what is already here. In aging, acceptance becomes the highest form of strength, because only a peaceful mind can truly experience life fully, even in its final chapters.